The end of 2024 saw the release of the long-anticipated remake for Dragon Quest III, under the beautiful style of HD 2D. A remake less than perfection would be considered blasphemous to the gaming industry, but the question remains, well, why? Well, the game was highly successful and completed the previous two games' story that has been set prior. As some may expect a sequel to 2, it showed us a prequel story set long before the original adventure. A fantastic move in hindsight to create something truly amazing. This game was special for the gaming industry way back in 1988. It became something of a legend for video games in Japan specifically. Does the remake capture that seemingly challenging task? Well, you can play about 20 minutes of the game and realize the answer is a definite yes. Welcome back, or a simple welcome, to the review of Dragon Quest III, specifically the HD 2D version. I covered the first two Dragon Quest titles to hype myself up more or less for the long-awaited release of this game. At the time, they were games that simply existed, mainly due to some archaic design choices and stylistic choices of a wet piece of white bread for the world to play on the Switch. They are serviceable at best, but do not do the series justice as they really should have. Knowing the first two games are in the process of being remade in the exact same vein in the HD 2D guise, I have my wallet extended for the inevitable release. Long story short, I'd love for you to check out my foolish thoughts. They are good games, but wait for the HD 2D version. I have seen zero footage, but I can confidently say that they are the superior versions. If the last line ages poorly, well, I swear to God. Moving aside, we will cover the game as a whole, with a large focus on the most recent version, being, in my opinion, the best by a long shot, and at least the most accessible. It is a pretty easy recommendation. I'm getting ahead of myself as we have not begun to even talk about the game. Full stop, my first impression of this game when I played the inferior version years back on the Switch, well, I really felt not a whole lot. I didn't hate the game, but did not get hit with the awe and power I felt many others experience. I not only wanted to see this remade for current gens, but I wanted to see if I missed the point or really feel any different. This is a game that sits as many's favorite in the series, so let's finally see what this remake got in its chamber for us today. Alright, well, let's get into it. This is Dragon Quest III. Specifically, we're going to be going over the HD 2D remake, but the original game released on the NES in 1988. Let's dive in. You know, one of my favorite things about Dragon Quest is the fact that the team kept things simple. The squad we already know were here. Yuji Horii as lead, Akira Toriyama adding his art, and Koichi Sugiyama making morally questionable decisions but composing his iconic music on the side. Development side took a while longer than 1 to 2, taking around a year. Still a wildly short time in today's standards, but hey, different generations altogether now. The sales and release were wild. Japan saw over 1 million copies sold on one day alone. The full gross in the first month was approximately 20 billion yen. Now, this was the economy of 1988 Japan, so that was around approximately 143 million yen at the time due to internet, I think. Different numbers if accounting for inflation, but that is all some insane numbers to think about. Thinking back to the general worldview on video games, the 80s were still seeing the rise in them as just they recently found their foothold a few years earlier. This money now may almost seem like chump change for some of the best-selling titles in modern day or of all time. Putting into perspective helps though, of course. JRPGs have never really been the biggest genres out there. While MMOs probably gross more due to subscriptions and junk, a standalone title in the 80s is crazy. Considering this would not even be released for the world yet too is extraordinarily wild. There of course is a large set of popular stories to coincide with the release of DQ3. The cultural phenomenon of this game cannot be understated. I cannot simply do this game justice for the sole fact that I was not in line for this game circa 1988 Japan. The stories go with all the people playing the game, children and salarymen alike. Things like the general economy, businesses, and schools went up in a proverbial kafrizz. That's fire for you uninitiated folk. Now, it is true that many arrests were made. Supposedly, it was around 300 arrests for truancy alone. It was connected with many students skipping school to buy the game. The other stuff goes in the fact that all subsequent releases of Dragon Quest were dropped on weekends in Japan. This would be due to the company Square Enix themselves deciding to hold off due to the overwhelming success and most likely the chaos they felt they might have caused. For a while, myself and probably others thought the Japanese government stepped into a degree, but if I spent more than really 5 seconds, I would have realized the issue with this. I mean, people called it the frickin' Dragon Quest law, for Christ's sake. No way that was real. No, simply the fact they wanted kids to enjoy the games to their fullest without racking up any truancy fines. Fair enough, I mean, give money to Big Enix, not big government, I guess. For the States, the release came out in 1992, and as we deduced, did not meet the same hype as Japan saw. It sold okay and reviewed just fine, nothing crazy to note here, but never hit off the same. While there are some more releases, the focal point for us is in 2024 with our remake. Hori still had his hands in this, of course, but leading the charge is Team Asano. Founded by name in question Tomoya Asano, a producer working for Enix since 2001. His name to fame would be the eventual split with the core crew and as a sort of subsidiary to Enix, dubbed Team Asano. This is most notable for the inception of the Bravely Default series, and also the success in dubbing of the HD2D namesake. Games like Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy sent this team into a popularity spike. The games aren't great and sold also great as well, and I hope they use this money to hire someone to focus on better name titles. Yeah, I'm still not forgiving him for Various Daylight. That name is ass. I mean, at the rate they are going, I'm expecting him to eventually drop an RPG title called This Title is a Work in Progress, following the monotonous cycle one finds himself in adulthood, working to make a living and having little to no desire to escape the droning reality of a middle-class worker until retirement or death him. High-octane action RPG coming 2028. Lastly, it is to be noted that while a remake it is in all its glory, this is now within a world without composer Sugiyama and artist Toriyama. They have had teams, proteges, and apprentices for a while who have worked with, learned under, and now assumed role that kind of fills the shoes before them. The series, I think, is still in good hand. The art and music alone goes to show that they at least have the skill to match that of their predecessors. I don't think there's anything wrong with what they're doing, I just hope that maybe eventually they'll look to expand farther than what they already had laid out before them. But time will tell. Background here, I had a decent amount to dig into, so I'm sure you're itching to actually hear the game proper. To have to experience the world that is Dragon Quest III. This world is different from what we came to know, expanded to an enormous world. The hero is Ortega, warrior of Aliahan. Due to interferences of Archfiend Baramos, the world is becoming more dangerous and risking peril at the hands of monsters. The king of Aliahan sets out Ortega on his quest to rid the world of Baramos and his crew. The unfortunate reality sinks in as Ortega never returns, leaving his wife and you, the hero, alone as a newborn. Growing up without your father, it seems like you have prepared to train for your entire life for the moment of your 16th birthday. On your birthday, you get an audience with the king of Aliahan, and again, are asked to slay Baramos, who threatens the world proper still. Ortega never did return, seemingly perished before even making it to Baramos. We are now tasked with following our father's footsteps. We are advised not to go alone, though, something Ortega seemingly did years prior. You are tasked with seeking out mercenary warriors to assist you, and recruiting your own band of merry heroes to take on the world is what you'll start doing right away. This follows one of the biggest characteristics of the story in-game. You pick your team. The only member of note is the hero. The others you recruit are simply up to you. In town is Patty's planning place, where you can deck out your team, names, look-in classes, and all that jazz. A pretty cool and revolutionary feature for the game. Even if Final Fantasy I had a similar concept 3 months prior, we see some stark differences. I mean, Final Fantasy I only had you do it at the start of the game. For 3, the customizability I feel here goes a lot more deeper, especially in the HD2D remake, of course. That being said, the characters here are set by you and your class, chosen personality trait, all that stuff. This is a big thing for those looking to maximize the most out of their characters. First up, personality. This game actually opens up in a dreamlike sequence with the hero. You are asked a lot of sort of personality type quiz that reminds me of something you generally see online, or hell, even something like picking your starter in the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon franchise. These actively, though, affect your growth rates for the character when you get your personality. Different personalities are better suited for each class. Obviously, high strength for a fighter, high intelligence for a mage, stuff like that. There are a staggering amount, and while there are objectively better ones here than others, due to how the game mechanics work and whatnot, it's really up to you. The hero has a decent spread of both types of physical and magical abilities, something seen in many a protagonist in the series. They have some banging magical spells as well as some huge physical abilities. They work best as a physical fighter, it seems like the general consensus is, but I'm not your dad, do what you really feel best. The hero also gets some good healing too. It's really a jack-of-all-trades character, but is still amazing in all sense. In Patty's place, you can recruit preset options for a few classes, but it is much better to go upstairs and honestly just create your own character. This way you can give them a name, job, gender, even multiple styles in the remake to better customize, and now voices for battle lines. You are allotted skill seeds to allocate some extra stats for your character. This allows you to better manipulate the stats for the personality to come through. The personality for the extended cast is chosen a little bit at random with some influence on the skill seeds you place into the stats at the end. Once again, you can do what you want here, but if you want to min-max the best personalities, you may keep trying over and over. Luckily, we can just say no to the personality and it resets all the stats instead of doing something like save scumming. I won't go into best personalities here, and honestly, you probably don't want to hear that either. There are personality manipulating items too that you can equip later on, but you're holding an accessory slot hostage, so keep that in mind. Do it before or after, really. Once again, up to you. A quick overview of jobs here, since I love me RPGs with job systems, and it's a pretty big mechanic here. All party members can be any class but the hero class. That's only exclusive for the protagonist, so let's go down the list of everything else. The warrior is a pretty standard fighting type class. They like heavy armor and like big weapons. They are tanky, hit strong, probably the slowest in your team however. Good all around for physical really anything, and never a bad time to have one in the party. Martial artists are fast and like the crit. They aren't as durable as the warrior for sure, but hopefully they sweep the enemy before they even get a chance to strike. Mages are your typical offensive magic user. They gain a wide array of single target spells and party attacking spells too. Good magic DPS, but are probably the weakest in terms of attack and defense in the physical sense. Priest is the mage counterpart. Healing and support is the main game here. They have some access to offensive spells as well as better physical capabilities, but lack the strength to carry one or the other. Can't ask for a better healer though, and probably really want one on your team. The thief is fast. They can also steal, have a lot of debuffing type skills, and are generally good attackers with decent crit and the best speed by far. Merchants are a little odd. They have some unique abilities, but the main standout is increased gold for every battle. For random encounters in JRPGs though, that is pretty huge. The gadabouts suck. They are inherently bad and unfun to use. They almost seem like a bard type at first, but have not super great moves, mainly relying on RNG. They can also just laze off, costing you a turn too. They sound useless, maybe a douchey trap for people or a challenge run for others, but they do hold the secret to use a little bit later on. That is the core set of classes. Now additional is the Sage and Monster Wrangler classes. Let's start with the Sage, as they're the first only unlockable class in the game. The previous gadabout can upgrade to the Sage naturally, or you can reclass with others with a specific item found in a limited quantity. The process we'll get into in an actual story portion, but keep that in mind. Sage is arguably the best class due to having a mix of both the mage and priest. It's the best healing again with the best offensive magic. They of course take some time investment, and making them a bit more overpowered is simply justified, so I get it. The Monster Wranglers are another starting class, but only really for the remake. They are an interesting bunch, having a unique skill set, with many coming from monster moves, like a Blue Mage Final Fantasy, I guess, in a sense, but they don't have to be gone and learned like in that series. They have a core use for monster collecting though, and your power will be how out of the way you choose your adventure to collect said monsters. Once again, we'll save that a little bit for the story section when it's applicable. Unique party composition is diverse, but I would not sweat it too hard. As you can foresee with my wording, class changing is an option later down the line, so pick the team you want, min-max, all that stuff if you want now or later, but at least customize your faces and personalities to your liking now. When you're all done, finally when you're ready, set out to explore the world past Aliahan's walls. After exploring the moderately sized island that makes up our hero's home, we go through a transporter, sending us to a different part of the world. A thing I love to touch on here is a simple scope. I love when video games, and specifically RPGs, do this. When exploring and doing the first jaunt of the quest, pulling up your map shows the continent you are on. Nice and all, but go outside the borders to see the minuscule island in comparison to the rest of the world. While a small detail in turn, it is great in terms of setting the stage and playing a role in some character development. With all context given, our hero has not stepped off in this island, maybe has barely even left Aliahan itself. Having his home country be the only map he's used to and then suddenly be shown the actual scale of this massive world shows that we have a lot to explore, learn, and experience. The game feels like it truly begins here, and we have a giant world to explore at our feet. Our closest destination is the town of Romali. Yeah, it sounds a lot like Rome. This shit is basically the Earth that we know with some small modifications. This helps you get a sense of real-world geography tying with the game's counterparts though. Also here is where we see a pretty common series staple with the Dragon Quest franchise. Something I always attribute to the multitude of different dialects and accents we see in the world. A lot of these run parallel to real worlds, like I said. They may use this by throwing in some words in their native language, or with the remake, hearing the different accents as well. It may be a bit corny to some, but I kinda like it. It feels like we're traversing across the entire world. The first two games kept a ye old-timey Shakespearean-ass dialect that honestly was sometimes more annoying to deal with than anything. I mean, hell, it felt like they were trying too hard sometimes to just be old-timey sake. Not all the towns and cities we see are on the nose of something as Romali is to Rome. So, at least that's cool. So anyways, we hear the king of Portoga giving away ships, which could be helpful. Son of a bitch, Portoga, Portugal. Fuck, I take it back. Try harder. The first section of this adventure is the acquiring of the keys phase. We help out some of the neighboring towns and kingdoms with their issue of the week crises. The king of Romali got his crown stolen by infamous thief Robin Hood. Did I mention Dragon Quest names are sometimes just peak? Some towns representing some Scandinavian countries are dealing with fairies, melodrama, a town put to sleep in a double game end. Oof. We infiltrate a pyramid in the desert, which is cool. All of these slowly unlock the keys we will be getting, established here for the series as well. The Thief Key, Magic Key, and eventual Ultimate Key unlock progressively larger amounts of doors for the player to gain access to. Sometimes require it, but many hold great secrets and extra loot. It's just a nice way of slowly opening the game's world to you. We need the Magic Key to access Portoga anyways, so getting them will only help us. Continuing through these towns has us see many folks. Some are happy to help us, even reminding us of a traveler who stopped by years prior. Of course, this is Ortega, and it is quite literally us following in our father's footsteps. Not a place in this vast world seems to have been skipped by Ortega on his quest, enough to leave lasting impressions on the townsfolk in droves. The other Dragon Quest games had us following the loose steps written out by our ancestors or what have you, but this one is a lot more tangible, more real, and of course a lot more personal. Here I have to shoehorn Quest 64. I talk a lot about this game, but never touched upon the fact that this laid inspiration for Dragon Quest III's plot. This is a joke. But seriously, the game's similar story of having a goal fall very close in line to learning about our father is here for both. Some folks do not buy the stories of Ortega's demise here. He was too raw of a human to simply perish by some weak monsters. It feels like the travelers spur a hope that Ortega is somewhere out there and we will eventually find him while taking out Baramos. Everywhere you go, hearing about your father, feeling like you could cross paths at any moment, putting you in the shoes of either protagonist, I'm sure this was a very intense feeling. For the hero, most of his life is spent growing up without Ortega, most likely believing he's been dead for this many years. I'm sure it stings, a reopened wound over and over. Most likely making peace with the fact that he will never see his father, only to have the world tell them that he might still be alive. It's a feeling I fully could not grasp, but I can't help but speculate on. I mean, man, we start this journey at 16 years old. While I could not find confirmation, some of the dialogue here seemed to indicate that this adventure took a very long time, potentially years by the end of the game. Having that feeling for so long must be mentally exhausting, but not much else we can dwell on for now. Reaching Portoga does not gift us a ship immediately. We have to give the white guy something to kick up his taste buds. We need to travel to the equivalent of India to pick up one of the strongest spices known to man. Black pepper. Now this part kind of eludes me, but I honestly think it's hilarious. I know history to the fact that countries sailed across the world to trade spices not known to other cultures. The fact that the king says, give me something spicy and you can take my ship, and then you give him black pepper and he's like, yeah, sounds good, is just peak white people. And they see we have no culture, give me a break. Yeah, you still got the spice, right?
Do I got it?
What kind of question is that? Here you go. Perfect. It's exactly what I needed. I myself chalk it up to a translation error that just stuck, maybe being an actual pepper-colored black, and due to the level of spiciness it contains, but I honestly don't know. I'm sure the more canon route is the man just probably thinks ketchup and mayo is too hot for his palate, but more importantly, we encounter an important area in Trek for this spice, All Trades Abbey. A common staple of the series, but the name is the place where classes can be changed. Those who seek a new vocation or job in life come to the Abbey and change with minimal setback. Class changing comes here and is pretty integral for character growth. Reclassing is all in all a great thing. It may set you back to level 1, but a few battles should catch you back up a little bit. The combos here can be pretty awesome, as you keep some spells and abilities you learned in prior jobs and they all compound, as well as some sort of stats as well. Start as a priest and then go warrior? You keep all your heals and now have a much tankier build. There are some obvious picks for superior builds, but you can theoretically do whatever you want. It helps with the game's overall ability to experiment and choose. You got a long ways to go before the confrontation with Baramos. Have some fun at least. You can become a sage here, recommended as I said. Finding the key item needed to reclass is literally in the tower north of the Abbey, so you don't have to do the gadabout route. The game's difficulty curve I feel is nicely paced for this testing of your different jobs. They expect you to change jobs, mess around a little bit, so I don't think they throw too crazy challenge curves at you right away to make you lose. Continuing onward is the other job I have not really covered as much, the Monster Wrangler. The new class here was quite fun and a big recommended for players, honestly, new and old. One of the biggest things to do for the Wrangler is find wild monsters in the world to recruit to your monster horde. There is a side quest where you can use recruited monsters in arena battles, and that's all cool and not. But collecting the mons gives powers to the Wranglers themselves. The milestones they hit give better abilities, and some of these straight up are cracked. I recommend trying out this class if you haven't played the HD 2D version yet. I kept this one on my team the whole time and had a blast. The monster pileup ability is super good and improves with the number of monsters you hold, so just keep finding more. There are scattered all around towns and in the overworld. A new feature gives way to little exploration places on the overworld too. These are usually found by walking into suspicious icons on the map. They're kind of like out-of-place trees, suspicious rocks, clearings, and whatnot, stuff like that. They also hold many goodies aside, like gear, so check them out even if you opt out of the Monster Wrangler job. I really like this feature as it incentivizes exploration into an overworld that may be a bit bland at times. Moving into the overworld itself is really fine, but walking from place to place is a lot more streamlined once you know the way or have played the game before. This new feature with those new areas made me explore every corner of the world, and I was really fine with this. I got to listen to one of the best overworld songs in gaming. Dragon Quest does their overworld songs good always, but damn, does this one not feel amazing to listen to. A proper adventure, if I do say so myself. Returning to Portoga nets us a ship to use. With a seemingly endless amount of the rest of the world to explore, our goal becomes a little bit more obtuse. We get a vision, luckily, seemingly guided by a mystical force throughout the entire game. We get hinted at gathering 6 magical orbs. When taken to the southernmost continent, it will awaken the legendary Everbird Ramia. Ramia will acknowledge our power and assist us on taking the fight to Baramos. With this comes a huge open section for those playing Dragon Quest III. The way to tackle these 6 orbs can be done in a pretty expansive order, almost open-ended to a degree. We have dozens of towns and other places to check and try to locate these orbs. The best thing we can do though is try out every single place. There are many side places to explore and many steps to gain each orb. This part can definitely feel overwhelming at first. While the first part of the game was a little bit restricted, we now see a whole new way to tackle this game. As I said in the last part, there's so much open-endedness to the job hopping here, and that's really welcome here. You gain access to the ultimate key early in this little part of the game, so you can have free access to traverse pretty much the entire world at your leisure. Another cool aspect here is you get your father's armor. Gaining this in and of itself is a quest, but rewarding at the very least. One specific example is a small town discovered here to revere Ortega, who seemingly spent some time here protecting the village from monsters. His impact led the whole town to remember this man and recognizes you as Ortega's child immediately. Our hero is gifted Ortega's helmet upon his departure as a token for taking care of him in return. The whole town seemingly feels obligated to pass the helmet down to the owner's son for use in the coming battles. It's a very nice and touching scene here, honestly. It's really cool in the remake to see kind of what Ortega did in parts of his quest. Now, the specifics here aren't super important of each orb. I won't be going over all of it, of course. The quests all have their own unique charm to gather them, but work in a similar RPG of world-hopping fashion where we have seen in the previous titles even. I'm a sucker for ruined towns, and Thedin is completely devastated. More incoming, but being the closest town to the lair of Baramos and the infamous volcano, the Necrogond, is the entire village just completely destroyed. At night, we see the spirits of those who die in ignorant bliss, unaware of the fate they suffered, it seems like. It's sad and gives us the incentive that Baramos really needs to be put down, aside from just the plot deeming it so. Hopefully more towns do not end up like this, because it's honestly a little freaky. The quest for the Yellow Orb is quite fun and memorable as well. We reach a small settlement where an old man from a nearby town split off to start his own place and colony, very similar to Americans starting off their journey, I guess. This requires us gifting a merchant character for a large portion of this game. It recommended just picking up a guy from the party planning place and disposing of them here. Meet our unofficial 5th party member of my squad, Jeff. Spelt like this, yes. The place becomes the name of your character, so now we return to Jeffburg from time to time and see how things are getting along. As the story progresses, you see the place expand more. More visitors arrive and buildings are erected. Over the course, we see Jeff become more greedy and controlling. Eventually, this leads to the people overthrowing the merchant and jailing him. It becomes the People's Republic of Jeffburg, no longer under the dictatorship that Jeff previously ran. Of course, after seeing the error of his ways, he relinquishes the town's leadership to the old man who started the journey with him. We get a hold of the Yellow Orb, a long since traded and beloved merchant treasure. The side plot was so stupid and goofy, but honestly, I love it. Lastly, the raw amount of aura we see after gaining the legendary sword called the Mountain Cleaver and hurling it to the maw of the Necrogon's volcano. This opens up a path to a sort of trial cave, and at the end you collect a silver orb. As the final orb most will get, this is so damn cool. Collecting all 6 orbs and placing them on the shrine for the Everbird awakens Ramia. We get sky travel here and can explore the rest of our world to our heart's content. There's a lot of side stuff to do here too, but of course this will access us to Baramos' castle, so do that when you're ready. This is a place surrounded by pretty much impassable mountains otherwise. But of course, at this point, we have explored pretty much the entire rest of the world and now can access the demon, resulting in most of the world's issues. Many of Baramos' minions were spread about throughout the world, holding orbs hostage as well as plaguing towns to no end. This man's might has been hyped up by his subordinates for quite a while now. Baramos' lair is something befitting of a final confrontation. The atmosphere is intense and unwelcoming. The monsters here are rampant and tough. The gross monster awaits us at the end. He expected our arrival and seemingly relishing in the demise at his hands. We hold nothing back though. For Ortega, our mother, the world, and everyone who has seemingly suffered, we will take down this tyrant. We win, he dies, and the heroes return. Seemingly won. However, Ortega was truly never found. At the very least, his death was avenged, as well as the people of this world can finally rest in peace. The King of Aliahan congratulates us and the ceremony begins in all its glory, as the game seemingly reaches its end. Seemingly. The celebrations are immediately cut short as an icy magic permeates the hall of the castle. An evil presence reveals itself to be Zoma, archfiend of the Dark World. Zoma mocks us for thinking we won, Baramos only being a minion under Zoma to conquer the world of light we reside in. With the new villain exposing himself to the hero, we really have to stop him too. Being guided by the dragon god of the light world, we are informed of the history of the worlds and Zoma. Zoma infiltrated the world of light, tearing a rift from the world of darkness, his home. This has been allowing his army to spew into our world, creating the issues we see. We are gifted an Orb of Light, an item that should be able to help us defeat Zoma when the time comes. We take it and enter the Pit of Gaiaga. This seemingly bottomless pit drops us down very, very far. We eventually find ourselves in a whole new world. Unfamiliar really to only the hero, though. Us as the player should very soon recognize this land. By its layout, music, or the nearby kingdom named Tantagel, we find ourselves in the World of Darkness, aka Alefgard. The connection to the first 2 games here, and the understanding of this finally being a prequel to the entire franchise, really truly shines here. Alefgard is very similar to how you may remember it, but the lands are shrouded in a perpetual darkness. Since we have not a whole lot of leads on how to tackle Zoma, we head to Tantagel. The town seems lively enough, though living under reign of darkness, monsters and their archfiend. The king welcomes us and immediately recognizes our relation to the man who served as a vassal for some time. This, of course, is our father, Ortega. Like us, Ortega fell into the Pit of Gaiaga at some point, hence why many people in the world of light believed in his demise. Ortega seemingly lost his memory for some time down here. Unaware of his prior obligations, he served valiantly under Tantagel's banner for some time. The last I heard of Ortega was his recent departure to Zoma's Citadel to stop the Fiend's reign. We decided to take the fight as well to this lord and begin our search through the familiar lands. Familiar it should be, because through traveling these lands we gather a reoccurring set of items here. The Sunstone and the Rainstaff are the same items we collected in our first adventure through Alefgard. Conveniently enough, our end goal here is also the same location, Zoma's Citadel and the Dragonlord's Castle being one and the same. Which in retrospect is kinda funny since the Dragonlord is just a glorified squatter moving in some time after the main game. This is already a cool callback, but tracing a similar path to that of the hero did in Dragon Quest I was something magical to see for many players, I'm sure. Obviously, hold on to this last line for a sec, cause as we know now, it's a prequel. In addition to the items we gain gathering the strength and new gear, we seek to rescue a goddess by the name of Rubis. This name may be familiar, the namesake being used specifically in Dragon Quest II. Rubis is a sort of creator goddess, aligned with the light supposedly, and at least resides in some dominion over the world of darkness. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is the goddess that many NPCs refer to, or is just a different per region and world and game. At the very least, she seems to be the reigning goddess over the lands of Alefgard. She was turned to a statue by Zoma and his crew, and we were sent to rescue her, as her help will surely be invaluable. Rescuing her gives us an amulet, which combined with our other Dragon Quest I items will create the same rainbow bridge to the Citadel. Alefgard can be explored for some extra grinding. Like I already said, it's really cool to see many things that we saw in the previous games, but right now it's seemingly setting things in motion. Damdara, that town most notable for being the home of Erdrick's armor in Dragon Quest I, is not in shambles in the deserty, poison swamp ruin. Some NPCs, too, seem to be alluding for their eventual role they will play in future games. Like, why random old men hang out in shrines waiting to gift a warrior with some item or weapon? It's cool revisiting the towns, even more so with the HD remake. Seeing this really makes me more hyped for the eventual release of 1 and 2 for the HD 2D series. Gosh, I can't wait. I recommend doing all you can here. You will need all the strength to best this frigid fiend. Enter only when ready. Zoma and his citadel are the final long gauntlet you will need to best. Near the end, we see a long path surrounded by monsters. There is one of Zoma's elite monsters, the King Hydra, battling an all-too familiar face. Yeah, it's finally Ortega. Our father is still alive and kicking. We attempt to rush to his aid, only to get bested by the onslaught of enemies thrown at us. Nearing the end of this castle, we are getting damn near every monster thrown at us by Zoma. We pummel through wave after wave, trying to assist our father. At this point, he may not even recognize us, let alone know he has a son. The last we heard, his memories were gone. Even so, he risked his life for this unknown land again and again. We get so damn close, only for the fight to finish and reach a seeming end. Ortega strikes King Hydra, only for the beast to retaliate with intense fire, burning the man down. The Hydra retreats, most likely wounded, leaving us alone with Ortega. The hero rushes up to the man, burnt and on death's door. The fire scorched him so bad his eyes and ears don't work anymore. He feels a person hold on to him, and he tries to tell this adventurer his last dying words. He tells you he finally has recently remembered who he was. He's now Ortega Valiahan. He laments the departure of his wife with his newborn son. He's lived the last 16 years with sorrow and regret, knowing that his family hates and resents him. Now dying out in the cold floor of this demon's lair, all he longs for is to simply be with those he loved most, but ultimately let down. You try to reach the truth to Ortega, but he can't hear anything anymore. It seems to be all in vain. Seemingly last wish was to see the face of the man who he listened to his final soliloquy. With the last of Ortega's strength, his hand reaches out towards the face of you. His hand brushes the helmet Ortega wore all those years ago, a helmet that would have been passed down his bloodline if given the chance. Most likely, with some regrets extinguished, so does his life. Knowing his son will carry out what he could not, Ortega passes on, his final words being, "Godspeed, my child." The tears cannot be shed yet, as they're still Zoma's most powerful and faithful here. We must continue. I mean, we have to. For the first time since the literal beginning, we are now officially carving out our own path. We spent so long following in the footsteps of our father, hearing of his tales, teetering on the edge of his own life being forfeit or not. Our reunion was short, if anything at all, and now we have nowhere to go but lower into this castle. Zoma's audience hall is dreadful, and the fiend sends his strongest fighters to stop you and test you. First up was the slayer of our father, the King Hydra. The Hydra is slain here in the name of our father Ortega, doing what he failed to do. Next up is the Soul of Baramos. Some interpretation could be done here, Soul feeling like a ghost or something of course, but I feel like Soul is the only thing this guy is lacking. The color palette is definitely different, but it feels more akin to something like a corpse than anything. Moving into this theory is the third encounter, being the bones of Baramos. His literal skeleton bursts out from the flesh it wore to continue to grind you down. It really feels, in my opinion, like Zoma is using some sort of necromancy to throw his underling's body at you, regardless of what gets destroyed. He already killed Baramos. Zoma knows this. It almost feels insulting and a cowardly tactic to wear you down. First, he pits you against your father's killer, and then a demon you thought you rid the worlds of. You beat him down to literal nothing remaining, Zoma seemingly showing no respect for one of his most powerful underlings. Finally though, you reach the end. Zoma from a design perspective is so damn cool. An amazing design and intimidating presence, the man who sunk Alfgard in the shadow, the man responsible for everything in these two worlds. You fight. The battle begins with sort of a dark misty aura around Zoma. Using the gifted sphere of light, you cast away the barrier for a more equal-footed competition. Technically, you can fight him without the sphere, but good luck. That battle is brutal. Once the veil is severed, the music kicks in, and the true battle for light and the dark worlds commence. The final battle song here, A Hero's Challenge, is simply phenomenal. Zoma is probably my favorite designed villain in the Dragon Quest series and holds the best final battle theme for me as well. It's intense, it's epic, the setting for the stage is perfect. Zoma holds nothing back with his attacks. The last 5 hours in this game haven't tipped you off. Zoma specializes with ice magic. The team you built will need to bring their A game. It's a pretty long fight. A really good fight through and through though. At the end you do best this demon and he falls to his knees. His words are brief and chilling. He knows his death in the end means really nothing. His powers have him already foresaw many who will take his place in the world. As a player, we know this all too well, and that he's not bluffing. In the end, Zoma gets the last laugh. He mocks you and your team for being mere mortals, as they will not be able to protect the lands from evil centuries down the line. Their lives will be long gone, and no guarantee that Alfgard will remain peaceful. With the hollow victory left in our hearts, Zoma collapses back into his throne and breathes his last. The castle crumbles and the team escapes. With a lot on your mind, you may not notice that upon reaching the outside, light is finally struck again in Alfgard. It's unclear how long Zoma's reign was, but this might be the first time many in the world actually see a true morning. The sun seemingly feeling like a faint hope in the sky. It's like, regardless of what you overcome, tomorrow is a new day. The team can visit the lands of Alfgard, of course, like in other games, but you are really stuck from going back to the light world right now. Returning to Tantagel, we speak to the king, who congratulates us on the victory. He informs us that the tie between the worlds of light and darkness was severed, unfortunately, though. It's most likely due to Zoma's initial meddling. The worlds were connected by a force that shouldn't have even existed in the first place. Now that he is dead, that connection was shattered. With this, the ugly truth hits us, and we'll never be able to return home. We're stuck in Alfgard for the remainder of our lives. It's another loss to pile on. The king still wishes to give us the best treatment for saving the realm, though. He holds a large festival and dubs you the hero, Erdrick. This is a title for our hero. For them, it's a title of bravery and honor. Should our name be obscured by the sands of time, our deeds and title will remain stalwart. In the coming days, the celebration dies down. Erdrick himself disappears from the world. Only known by, I'm gonna assume, his close and select few friends, he left his armor, shield, helmet, and sword with those he trusted most. These gained the title, of course, of Erdrick's armor. These acted as ancient relics and heirlooms, similar to how they helped Erdrick. Their strength will once again have to be utilized in the future, when evil will strike again. It is why we collect them, in the same gear, to kill the Dragon Lord. They will be the keys to success in the future. While Erdrick may not be there in a physical sense, his legacy, deeds, strength, valor, and kindness are sown throughout the world of Alfgard. And these are the seeds of salvation. Salvation is described as preservation or deliverance from harm, ruin, or loss. The tools Erdrick used to defeat his enemies were the way to secure the future for those he could not protect. We know at least 2 more times that evil plagues these lands. Zoma was not wrong. Erdrick is long dead in Dragon Quest I. The Dragon Lord and Hargon both bring these worlds to close demise once again, and the descendants will have to take up the same sword. These were hidden around the world as a sort of trial, so the worthy can find these and not have them fall into the wrong hands. In a way, this game is the perfect prequel. The ending sets up a lot of failure one by one. Erdrick loses his father right in front of him. He cannot return home to his mom or the world he grew up in. The world will continue to be plagued far into the future. It all feels for nothing. Empty. The evil may be gone, but it's only temporarily. But it's not the case in actuality. It is a very common trope to see in a lot of these narratives that a force may be reoccurring and unable to be fully defeated. It can make one lose hope, but regardless of how the outcome felt, we are the world's salvation. You still save the world, and your legacy and blood will continue to fend off the evils again and again. This game is about legacy. The whole damn game, Erdrick follows in Ortega's footsteps. This isn't meant in some games' context where he might be seen as like a rival or somebody we're trying to best. But simply put, you are the hero, but still regarded to many as the son of Ortega. This world of light had their hero, and that was Ortega. His son is seemingly just continuing the fight. In the world of darkness too, Ortega shone through, but eventually he failed. 99% of this game has us walking down the same road Ortega did, and at the end, when all hope seems to be at its lowest, we carve out our own legacy. We become the legend. And we are Erdrick. Thinking on Ortega's final words, I'm sure this is exactly what he wanted to see. His son write his own legacy. Ortega, through all of his achievements, felt alone. He had some companions and allies we see throughout the game, but they all go off eventually on their own, and Ortega reaches Alefgard alone, with no memories even. Ortega confesses his despair, and while the world regarded him as a legend, he saw himself as nothing more than a pitiful excuse of a father. I can only imagine the resolution in his heart knowing that his son was the one to hold him the last time and finally got to carry on the torch. I'm no father myself, but I can only imagine this is the best thing a parent could ask for of their kin. To be better. To be the person they never could be. It is an end that's seemingly sad for the player, but is meant to give hope to us and the world. I think that's a good way to look at this game that is equal parts of a simple fantasy as it is silly and goofy at times. Sometimes it's not always what you do in the present that will be most impactful. We may feel that each day can be void of no purpose, or that in the end, will anything matter? I think that what we do in life can be interpreted as our own way of sowing the seeds. In the end, Ortega wasn't a failure. Whether intentional or not, he laid out his own seeds of salvation. From his literal offspring to the many people he helped and touched upon the world, leaving his gear, knowledge, wisdom, and allies spread throughout the world, was simply integral for his son to complete the journey. Erdrick then repeated what Ortega did for his very own son. Sometimes you may feel like Ortega, sometimes you might just give up hope, but it's simply how you spend each day that really matters. Your legacy will be what outlasts you, and how you choose to plant and water those seeds is really in your own hands. I love this game. It's special for many, and I truly get that now. Dragon Quest III shows how to complete a trilogy by starting the whole events off. Its gameplay is tight as can be, holding up to the present day. The story beats in some part may feel uneventful, but if anything can be taken away from this video, it's the fact that we really have control of our own actions. We have the power to make a difference. It may not be large, and it may not be immediate, but it's simple and effective message to take away. It's okay to be lost. It's okay to even fail. What matters is you tried. To make an attempt. Wouldn't it be better to say I did it rather than I wish I did it? I mean, I have to remind myself this a lot too. It seems silly to many, I'm sure, even taking this message from an NES game before I was even born. But to me, if a game can have me ponder something this long, that's something so silly for a game, talking about your legacy, salvation, or anything to that regard, and so effectively too, well, I cannot think that this is anything but a goddamn extraordinary game.